Hi everyone, Robert Farrow speaking of Robert Farrow's Tea and Tarot. We have a full table of pages here today. This is the fourth in my series of videos about the reading of the court cards. What I'd like to say about the pages to start off with is that, as you know, I'm kind of interested in the traditional backgrounds of these cards, because I think that if you don't incorporate a little bit of those into your work with the court cards, then things can get a bit wishy-washy. Or if you just go for the elemental and astrological readings, things can get really complicated and a bit brain-frying. So I think these traditional meanings, even though they're a bit random in a way, I like them because they got loads of character. Now, as I've said before, the pages underwent a kind of gentrification when the Rider-Waite-Smith deck was created. In fact, they weren't really pages before then. They were knaves. And knaves were a bit older than pages. They were sort of up and running young men, whereas pages are really little boys who can't do anyone any harm. So the traditional meanings that still kind of are in the background of these 4 page cards are a bit surprising, because they all apply to fully grown men, some of them quite formidable. These meanings didn't get attached to the knights, because the knights didn't exist in the original deck of playing cards, and the traditional meanings accrued, if you like, in pre-Renaissance times. So that the knights haven't got old medieval meanings attached to them, and the pages have. Now, I find these traditional meanings particularly helpful with the kings and the queens. I think it's great, for example, that the King of Batons used to be associated with Julius Caesar, egomaniac, leader, whatever you like. I think it's great to know that the King of Cups is connected with this very philanthropic, enlightened Charlemagne, or the King of Pentacles with the rather ooh-la-la, generous, bisexual Alexander the Great. And the queens as well have very interesting meanings attached to them. These 4 young men here, they also have meanings which I use a little less in my readings, because I think they're not quite so integrated into Pamela's concept, in a word. Because rightly or wrongly, A.E. Waite and Pamela decided to make these pages young androgynous figures. So I'll tell you what I mean. For example, let's start with the Page of Wands. Page of Wands relates to the Jack of Clubs, doesn't he? And the Jack of Clubs relates to the Greek hero Hector. So, Hector was a hero of the Greek war. And our Page of Wands is not really a warrior, is he, in this manifestation? So I think what you can say about the traditional meanings here is that there was a kind of a squeaky clean reputation attaching to Hector. He was one of the most admired, chivalrous, sort of immaculate heroes of the Trojan War. All the pages could be messengers. All the pages could be people who serve you and support you. The rank of page relates to the element of earth, and earth has a kind of seriousness. So all the pages are slightly serious, in the sense that you could say that all the knights are slightly fiery, because the rank of knight relates to fire. The 4 pages are serious in different qualities or in different fields. Now, the Wands family, as I've said before, they have strayed out of Hobbit land, haven't they? They've strayed out of Sussex, and they seem to be in Egypt, really, don't they? they're looking for something. They're looking for enterprise. They're looking for adventure. They're looking to make their dreams come true. So I think the Page of Wands is a scout. He or she is scouting for the right territory or the right arena or the right field of operation where projects and dreams, where a future can be built. And the Page of Wands takes this seriously. The Page of Wands was traditionally felt to be making an announcement. He's traditionally associated with surprising news. I think this page, to sum up, is someone who does support you, but probably supports your projects rather than your emotions. He or she is probably not a shoulder to cry on. I also think because he or she has this rather aristocratic, rather high-class feeling, and I think that also is reflected in the costume. They may be working for you, but they probably don't see themselves as your subordinate. The Page of Cups. We love the Page of Cups, don't we? A thoroughly androgynous figure, beautifully coloured by Pam, and also quite a surrealistic figure. The Page of Cups is fun because I'm going to say he because I described a card by its gender, but as you know, these archetypes are beyond gender. We like Page of Cups because he's one of Pamela's more theatrical characters. He's standing on one of these stages here. We see water in the background, we see a cup, and we see a fish coming out of the cup, sort of like Monty Python does surrealism there. You've probably heard this interpreted many times, but I think it's fairly important to point out that the cup is containing the element of water. Water, which also refers to the ocean, refers to the subconscious, the unconscious. And so the fish, who has his mouth open, seems to be delivering a message from the subconscious. So that's a pretty strong message coming through in Page of Cups there. Okay, you can read these court cards clearly, either as people who come into your life, you can read them as a role that you're playing or a mood that you're having, or you can read it as a message, as just part of the tarot's vocabulary. And I find this card very useful to read in this way, that when I see it, I feel, okay, the universe is saying there's a message that needs to come through from my unconscious or from the collective unconscious. And that may come through in a dream, that may come through in meditation, that may come through in a tarot reading, or it might come through as I'm walking down the street and I just feel some kind of connection. So I think this is kind of like an alarm bell. This card alerts you to pay attention to your dreams, or just to be available for messages from the subconscious. And that can be quite a salutary thing to hear. You know, if you're rushing around, trying to get things done, feeling frustrated, then this card might mean slow down, go to bed, meditate, have a sleep, and just remember your dreams in the morning. I think as a personality, as a character in your life, the Page of Cups is someone who supports you emotionally. This is somebody who might offer you a shoulder to cry on, or might just be a confidant, someone to laugh with, someone to have a couple of drinks with. Now, I think the background traditional meaning of Page of Cups is quite a long way from the Pamela image. The Page of Cups was traditionally Paris of Troy, the man who stole Helen of Troy and caused a war and basically brought catastrophe down upon his people because, he wanted a particular partner. So there are actually two pages in the deck that have implications of being sort of sexually disruptive, I would say, or disruptive in the love sphere, and that's these two. I think it's worth knowing at the back of your mind, but I wouldn't make too much of it. Now, Page of Swords is a really interesting card, and I think really useful card. He was associated with someone called Ogier the Dane, who was one of Charlemagne's paladins. And this figure, this mythological or historical figure, became a kind of a patron of hunting. From here, the Page of Swords got a reputation as a spy. I mean, swords are airy, they're mind people. The sword family are perhaps not the warmest family in the deck. Clearly, when you see Page of Swords on the table, and unless you're a very melodramatic tarot reader, you're not going to start telling your querent that they're about to, meet James Bond or someone from the Secret Service, or they're not going to have their phone tapped by, some nefarious foreign agent. I'm not really talking about that kind of spying, but let's reduce this to a more day-to-day sort of mundane level. I think the appearance of the Page of Swords can be, if you like, a warning that perhaps you are being observed. Perhaps there is a question about your reputation, which is coming up. It may be that if you're thinking of wanting to get away with something on the sly, of doing something which you wouldn't particularly want to be public, and you see the Page of Swords, well, maybe, think again and check that your privacy is completely watertight. I also want to say something about the Page of Swords as a character. There's a very nice detail in this card that I want to show you here. You see these birds flying around, birds as, part of the sky imagery, but they do make the shape of a fish there. And what Yolanda Robinson says, which I think is brilliant, is that as we go from Page of Cups here, who's receiving this material from the subconscious, as we progress to Page of Swords, the fish, isn't that amazing? It goes up into the air and becomes a thing of air. This thing of water becomes a thing of air. So this rather amorphous material from the subconscious, which may be crazy, which may not make logical sense, which comes into consciousness through the Page of Cups, is taken up by the Page of Swords, who's a more intellectual person, a more intellectual energy, and turned into ideas and opinions and strategies. Okay, so in conclusion, Page of Swords, be a little bit careful about this person. He or she may not have your best interests at heart. Okay, everybody, last but by no means least, the lovely Page of Pentacles. And just before I get on, I'd like to reiterate that if you're interested in these traditional meanings that are still attached to the 16 court cards, I recommend the works of a man called Paul Hewson, who is a very, very good researcher and has written about these in a very interesting way. And he's actually made his own tarot as well, Madame Fortune's Wheels Tarot, I think it's called, where he really includes these mythological figures. He puts them right back into the deck, which is fun. Page of Pentacles is Earth of Earth, so he is the earthiest member of the tarot, you could say, or the earthiest court card. But what I like about this illustration is that it reminds you that Earth is not necessarily heavy. Look at the way he's holding that pentacle. It appears to be weightless. I think it's good to remember that the element of Earth encompasses the sign of Taurus, which is the sign that appreciates beauty and art. So it's also important to remember that Pentacles people are thorough and hardworking, and sometimes they can have their nose down in their work and maybe appear to be a little bit, I don't know, do they have the reputation of being a bit plodding? But I think it's more interesting than that. I think Pentacles people, for example, Virgo people, they are known for the quality, the high quality of their work. And sometimes the willingness to see a job through to the end, which Pentacles people have, can be an important part, for example, of the artist's personality. If you want to write a novel, you better have a little bit of something like Virgo in your mix, because Virgo is someone who is very thorough and who sees it through to the end, and who crosses the T's, dots the I's, and completes the project. Yeah, if you're going to write a novel, and that could take you 6 months, it could take you 3-4 years, you have to have staying power, don't you? So Page of Pentacles is not a Philistine. I think the implication of this card is that he does cherish beauty and the things of this earth. As I say, the pages should serve you in some way. That's what pages do. That's what Earth does. We've seen that, Page of Swords might serve you in a slightly tricky way. He might not be all that he seems. We've seen that Page of Wands might serve you while retaining a bit of distance and letting you know that he or she is in fact, a person of great status and maybe more status than you. The Page of Pentacles, if this person offers you advice or support, it really is something you can take at face value. There's nothing tricky going on. Traditional meaning? Well, this is another humdinger, this traditional meaning. He's associated with Sir Lancelot. And Sir Lancelot, as you probably know, was a knight at King Arthur's table, and he was the knight who had an affair with the king's wife, Guinevere. And really that was the beginning of the end for the Arthurian court. It kind of fell apart after that. So actually, a bit like Page of Cups, Paris of Troy here, who caused disaster by pursuing a woman. Exactly the same story, really. The Page of Pentacles is also connected to someone who caused disaster by pursuing a relationship. No matter how great that relationship might have been, there is a feeling of love complications coming from these two. Make of that what you will. In conclusion, I like to read court cards in terms of energies, because I think it's relatively difficult to look at a court card and then say, oh yeah, that is definitely my mother, or that is definitely my bank manager. But because that court card is a fire sign, or because that court card is a woman or a non-binary person or whatever. It's quite difficult to do. I think you can be intuitive, and if you see a person in the mix, you can say, oh, in that area of your life there is someone who is undermining you or supporting you. I think you have to be very intuitive about connecting court cards to people. Clearly you want to do that in readings, but there's a lot of intuition involved. So with regard to the meanings of the 16 cards, I find them very useful as symbols of energies, or kind of advice cards, alarm bells, indications of what maybe is needed in a certain situation. So to put these in the correct order, I could sort of give my keywords for these 4 cards. Everyone needs to form their own keywords for tarot cards, but here are mine. I see Page of Wands as scouting, looking for the new field of operation. I see Page of Cups as maybe in a sense listening, being open and available for those messages from the other side. I see the Page of Swords as observing. You could call it spying, seeing, watching, and also being watched, being observed, in not necessarily a benevolent way. And I see the Page of Pentacles as someone who takes things seriously. And for me, that kind of indication, that alarm bell, when I see that page on the table, is it seems to be saying it's advisable at this moment to take this or that matter seriously. So I read that card as taking things seriously, and that's quite helpful for me. Okay, so that concludes my romp through the 16 court cards, and for my sins, I'm going to romp through the major arcana this year. So stay with me. If you have any ideas about really useful or brilliant ways of reading these cards, or if anything I've said has triggered you or interested you in any way, let me know in the comments. And see you next time. Okay, bye.